Hi, my name is Jeff Smith, and in our continuing TV speaker series, today we have Chris Lennon from Harris Systems, from Harris Corporation, rather. He's been working in the TV industry for about 20 years now. He's driven several significant standards, such as PCMP, which allows distribution of program-specific information for ATSC digital broadcasting. Currently, he's in the middle of wrapping up a truly monumental standardization effort, which is going to be the next generation trafficking and billing system. So allowing broadcasters to share information about available spots, people to reserve those spots, reporting, billing, et cetera. It's going to close. The final ballot's going to be in the next few weeks. He expects it to be rolled out en masse in 2007. So this is going to be, what we're looking at is going to be the way the industry operates for the next couple of years. So I anticipate it being very interesting. Also, one thing to remember, this is going to be on Google Video, so when we ask questions internally, let's make sure we don't ask anything confidential. So Chris graduated from college at McMaster University in Ontario. As I mentioned, he's been working in TV for 20 years. He's been at Harris for the last 16 years, and he's currently the Director of Integration and Standards in the Software Systems Group. And the standard he's going to talk to us about is SMPTE S20, is the SMPTE 2021 that's being brought together by the S2210 working group. So those are all the magic strings you can search for on the internet to learn about it. And without further ado, here's Chris.
All right, thanks, Jeff. As Jeff said, I'm here to talk about the BXF project within SMPTE. And as a quick intro to this, the problem this was initially targeted at solving was traditionally in the broadcast industry. It's been a terrible mess of proprietary one-off interfaces. And literally, I'm not exaggerating when I say there have been hundreds of these interfaces created over the years, connecting systems, allowing them to exchange metadata, exchange schedule information, that type of thing. And it's just been a terrible mess for customers and for vendors alike. So that was the initial problem this was targeted at solving. And it grew a little bit out of that, but we've done, I think, a pretty good job of keeping the scope fairly reasonable. So that's just a quick background of what this is, what it was initially targeted at, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll have a pretty good understanding of what it is, what types of workflow it enables, that a lot of these things, and for those who aren't very familiar with the broadcast industry, a lot of these things here might not seem revolutionary to you, but they are revolutionary in the broadcast industry. Some things you might take for granted in the broadcast industry, they don't work as smoothly as you might think today. There are a lot of systems in place in broadcast facilities right now that have been there for 10, 20, 30, even 40 years. So a lot of the technology is not exactly leading edge. So when you're talking about things like this, this truly is leading edge in the broadcast technology area. So let's go ahead and begin. How do we describe the environment in today's typical broadcast facility? If you asked a typical broadcaster, you'd get, well, if he was politically correct, you might say exciting, chaotic. Certainly it is quite chaotic when I talk about these hundreds of different proprietary interfaces going back and forth, exchanging data. Certainly from a systems perspective, it's quite chaotic. You could even use the word dizzying. It's mess is a good word to describe the way data flows in a broadcast facility right now. It's quite a miracle that pictures and sound get on as professionally as they do when you look under the covers and see how these places actually operate. It's quite a mess right now. So my personal politically correct way of characterizing a broadcast environment is dynamic, and it certainly is dynamic today. And with the advent of digital television and a lot of the new technologies that broadcasters, some being forced kicking and screaming to come up into the 21st century, it's been a bit of a challenge. There's a few significant trends that have been driving us in the direction of new technology. Most significantly are a few of them here: the storage metadata or storage media area, where we're going primarily from a linear tape-based operation, where you actually have the content on magnetic tape and being run off of magnetic tape, and when you're talking about episode 5 of Friends, I can actually put it in my hand and feel it, and here it is. Moving totally away from that to nonlinear types of delivery, file-based storage, and would you say tape is dead? No, not quite, but it's in its death throes, that's for sure. Then the whole analog to digital area, on the consumer side, we're all familiar, I think, with the fact that television is going largely analog to digital. The HDTV movement is finally getting the momentum that people were hoping it would have for the last several years, and over the last 1 or 2 holiday seasons, it's really done well. And I've seen just for this holiday season, you're finally getting decent HD sets down under the $1,000 level, and really getting LCD sets growing in size. There's a lot of technology that is pushing this forward a lot quicker now than it had been. It had always been a joke in the broadcast industry for a long time that digital television was always 10 years away. But now you really can see that it's not that far away, and in fact, analog television is due to turn off in less than 3 years. We're only 2.5 years away from analog television signals ceasing to be sent across the airwaves. So, but that's the part that's visible. Where I say on this slide here, it's not just in the transmission area, and a lot of even broadcasters get caught in the trap of saying the digital transition, well, it's just the fact that I'm now transmitting bits rather than analog waveforms. But that's not, that's the easy part as far as I'm concerned. The fact that you're transmitting in digital means you have to change everything upstream to digital in order to make this all work within your plant. So there's a very significant domino effect that's taking place in broadcast facilities as a result of the consumer end shift from analog to digital. And then finally, and this goes along with the whole digital area, is the area of embedded metadata. And I don't know if you're familiar with things such as AAF and MXF, which are some newer standards that have emerged to allow embedded metadata along with the digital content. That's the beauty of digital content. You can embed metadata right along with it, and it doesn't have to be decoupled. So those are just some significant trends here. So in the area of content distribution, you can see we had the guy, your friendly UPS guy, delivering tapes every day to the TV station. Well, the UPS and FedEx and all those guys must be really feeling the pinch of this, because across 1,700 TV stations or so, just in the United States, think about the number of tapes that were flowing in and out of there. When you have 1 tape per commercial, per program, that's a lot of tapes going back and forth every day to all these facilities. And that's by and large being replaced by digital delivery, by satellite, fiber channel, even over the internet. So a major change there. You also have, I was talking about decades-old systems, and it's not an exaggeration to say several broadcast facilities are using systems that are 30, 40 years old, and they're still using them today. It hasn't, the broadcast industry probably hasn't evolved at the rate that a lot of other industries have, and now they're having to make quantum leaps rather than having a gradual evolution over the last few decades. They're having to jump into modern technology all of a sudden from stuff that was built back in the 60s in some cases. So it's been both an exciting and a painful time to be in the broadcasting area. So this is my before and after kind of picture. A broadcast facility it has more than this, but here are 4 distinct areas within a broadcast facility. Airtime sales, where you're actually selling the commercial content that's going to go on your signal. Content scheduling, where you're scheduling programs. Digital asset management, where you're managing all those video assets that you've got. And then you've got the automation area, which is actually automating all that, putting it to air, getting your transmission on the air. And before, those operated really as completely separate islands. You had one area, and they'd finish their work with something, and they'd hand it off and say, okay, it's not my problem anymore, it's your problem, you deal with it. So this is the way it was, and this is the way it was for since pretty much the inception of television up until a few years ago. And I got a little carried away with animations here, but you had things like floppy diskettes and people handing pieces of paper back and forth. And some of this, believe it or not, still exists today. And of course, you had just stacks of paper. It's funny when you're talking about the whole business here is video content, but the whole business was very, very paper driven. So anyway, it was a real mess of what you had in this area, and this really led to what I'm terming here the digital meltdown. What this chart is illustrating for you is if you start down on the lower left where you've got your advertisers, and I think everybody here is familiar with the fact that advertisers now are wanting to get their message to more people across more mediums, get it probably more targeted in a lot of cases. And so they're putting a lot of pressure on broadcasters in that area. And then on the other side, at the very top, you've got the content owners, and these would be the people who have produced the actual program content that the commercials are being inserted into. They say, on the other hand, well, I need to protect my rights with this, because the fact that I'm making this available digitally means it can be easily pirated, copied without a loss of quality as it's being copied. So you have them putting the pressure on the broadcasters, saying, yeah, you need to get this out to consumers on various platforms, but protect it. So the lowly broadcaster then has all this pressure being put on them to do all these new things, but do it cheaper and with fewer people. There aren't big new budgets within broadcast operations to do delivery to mobile devices, for instance, or that sort of thing. They're just expected to do it and find a way to do it and hopefully do it cheaper. So it's led to a real problem. And on the far right, the last part I've got here is talking about the many platforms, that you're not just talking about somebody sitting in their living room in front of a television anymore. Television content, the fact that it's all digital now, can be delivered to a vast array of platforms, some of which you can imagine now, some of which we probably can't even imagine that it will be delivered to. Just some background for those who aren't all that familiar with the evolution of broadcasting. This is just kind of an overview of what has taken place over the last few decades in the area of broadcasting. You started out in the 70s and 80s where you've got free TV, and that's the dominant means of getting content and advertising to people. All the advertising revenue is pretty much based on ratings at that point. Again, people sitting in their living rooms. Broadcast and cable TV are the major means of getting that content to people. Of course, you've also got cinema, regular old television, and VHS tapes. And it's all analog when you're at that point. Then you shift into the 90s and the turn of the century here. You get, I'm characterizing that as the subscription pay-per-view era, where that became a pretty dominant force. Revenue, it becomes more based on subscribers rather than eyeballs that are being counted in ratings. Things such as pay-per-view, video on demand, satellite TV come in. Digital cinema starts to come in, DVDs, video games, etc. Then moving out from now to the next 15 years or so looking forward, I'm characterizing that as a transactional consumption era. Is what we're moving into there. Much more targeted advertising, value-based. You have electronic download of content, interactive TV, which has had some problems getting going, and it remains to be seen how much of a success that's going to be. But you shouldn't discount it completely. Games, e-commerce, or what some people in broadcasting term T-commerce, where you've got commerce through your television set. And as we discussed, high-definition television being a major factor there, mobile television, internet television, online gaming. There's several, and you could go nuts with that list of the things that are coming down the road. But that's just some of them. So that kind of characterizes where we've been going here. The biggest thing, though, within broadcast facilities has been these technical limitations that you've got have been vanishing. And so there were good reasons why, in a lot of cases, and in some cases not so good reasons, but in a lot of cases there have been good reasons why they didn't evolve and why you have these systems that have been in place for decades. But a lot of those have been disappearing lately, and as a result, the target for broadcasters recently has been more workflow. And that's, if you go to trade shows in the broadcast area now, it's all about workflow, workflow, workflow. How do we make this all work better? It goes back to that digital meltdown slide that I had, where I discuss the fact that they're getting all this pressure to do all these new things, but no more money to do it with. So they have to improve the way things operate within their plants, become more efficient, do more with less type of thing. So the traditional approach that the broadcast industry has had for connecting systems has been largely point-to-point solutions. I've got system A needs to talk to system B. The two vendors get together, work out a way to do that. As a result, you have a whole collection of proprietary interfaces, which by their very nature, they're not extensible. They were built to solve today's problem. And if my requirements change 2 or 3 years from now, there's no easy way to extend those. They're very static oriented interfaces. Largely batch in nature, as I was talking about with the different islands within a facility. One area finishes their work and hands a file off, or if you're unlucky, a piece of paper off to another system. So very batch-oriented, file-based when you have exchanges. The whole concept of messaging between systems truly is a revolutionary thing in this industry. And these interfaces, for the most part, were computer-friendly. Certainly not people-friendly. If you look at a lot of these protocols, they just look like gobbledygook to most people. But they were built for a purpose. They were built using 10, 20, 30-year-old technology. So you have to understand where they came from to see why they are the way they are. So the solution is BXF, the Broadcast Exchange Format. And this is something that a couple of years ago, I formed a group within SMPTE, which is the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, which is the major standard-setting body for television and for digital cinema. And I took this problem to them and said, my company, at the very least, Harris Corporation, has literally, we alone have hundreds of proprietary interfaces that we have built over the years to connect systems, and we're really not interested in continuing in that direction. We'd like to, we see an opportunity for standardization here. And so we started this group a couple of years ago, and it's grown to a very large group. Like I said, over 80 corporations involved in this, hundreds of people involved in the effort, and we'll get a little bit later into where this is and the status of the group. But suffice it to say, this is not smoke and mirrors. This is something real and about to be implemented in the industry. So what is it? In the initial scope, if I distill it down to its simplest level, it's a single protocol, as we have here, for exchange of content and event-related. And when I talk about event-related, it's more schedule-related type things. I have events that need to take place at particular times. So you've got the content, which is actually the programs and commercials, and then when are these supposed to be broadcast out to the consumers? And primarily, it was initially designed to work among these 4 types of systems. Program management, those who manage program rights. When am I allowed to air this particular episode or this movie, that sort of thing. Traffic systems, which a traffic system's primary role is to schedule advertising and to optimize revenue for broadcast operations. Does a lot more than that, but that's the bottom line. Automation systems, which actually put all the spots and programs to air. And then the one that was added very quickly after we formed the group was content distribution systems. This is where I was talking about UPS and FedEx being kind of put out of the delivery business in at least the broadcast area of delivering these tapes. This all being delivered by digital content delivery companies who have relationships with the major studios who produce all these programs, with the various ad agencies and advertisers for delivery of their commercials. So there's some people making very good businesses out of just the delivery of those files now. What technology is behind BXF? It's XML. The base of the standard it's a schema. We have been very careful to build in what I'm terming informal extensibility into the schema. We acknowledge the fact that if we decided to try to build a schema that was the be-all and end-all and would do everything for everybody, we'd never get it done. So our goal very quickly became build something that will be a solid foundation upon which we can build on. So it covers 80 to 90% of the requirements of the industry right now. But you're always going to have things that one system wants to exchange with another system that no two other systems will ever want to exchange. Does that belong in a standard? No. So what we did is allowed a lot of extensibility within it, informal extensibility areas we call private information, that allow you, if you have something that's not covered by the standard, you don't just say, oh, well, I can't use the standard. It doesn't do what I need it to do. There are places you can put in your little proprietary things if you want to add those in as extensions. It's also totally transport independent. If you want to use this to exchange files still, and again, like I said, there are old systems here that may not be easily upgraded to something that would be capable of exchanging dynamic messages back and forth. They may be stuck with file exchanges. So, you know, we permit file exchanges using this protocol. I think the more likely scenario with a lot of the more modern systems will be they'll be message-based, you know, using SOAP and similar technologies to exchange XML messages back and forth, dynamic exchange of information, rather than getting away from the traditional, what I was talking about, the batch exchange of data between systems. So let's talk about a few of those systems that are involved. The content distribution systems, as I said, today, largely content does arrive in the form of files, and that's been, as I said, a revolutionary thing in the industry that it wasn't that way a few years ago. And the beauty of that, of course, is the essence. And when I talk about essence, essence is the video, the audio and video components. Essence arrives with metadata. The SMPTE definition of content is content equals essence plus metadata. Okay, so that's, you'll hear me talk about essence and metadata. Those are the two components of content. You're in the scenario now of minutes versus hours or even days to get new content. So you can have systems now request dynamically new spots, new programs, and actually get them in a matter of minutes, rather than having to pick up the phone, call the distributor, say, hey, I need this program or I need this spot, and they'll say, well, okay, it'll be in tomorrow's FedEx shipment. Whole lot quicker, more efficient now. We also, within BXF, support push or pull models. So either the content distribution person, if they suspect or know or suspect that a particular broadcaster is going to need a piece of content, they can push it down along with its metadata to them. Or you can do a pullback from the broadcaster to say, hey, I just got this spot added. You need to air this McDonald's spot this afternoon. I don't have it in-house. Can you deliver it to me? They can make that request using BXF. The other significant area of impact of the BXF standard is in the area of what we call ingest. And ingest is the ingestion of video content into your broadcast facility so that it's ready to air. What this enables, using BXF, you can have fully automated ingest. Again, the old model here was, you know, once you get that tape in, which may take a matter of days to get that tape in, and you have to have a highly paid and highly skilled operator load that into a VTR, shuttle it along, say, okay, here's the start of it, type in the metadata that's associated with it, make sure the video quality is okay, go to mark the endpoint, and then say, okay, copy this to a video server so that I can actually air this. So very, very labor-intensive, time-intensive process. This can become fully automated. These are being delivered as files. They have metadata along with them. You have the BXF standard that enables you to request that metadata and to request the content down. Once it comes down, the system that receives it can recognize what it is and automatically ingest it and have it ready for air, again, in a matter of seconds or minutes rather than hours or days. So that's the quick overview of that. Another major impact that BXF is anticipated to have in the broadcast area is the area of sales. Sales has had for a long time the desire to sell spots right up to the last minute or the last second. However, there's been operational reasons within broadcast facilities that they couldn't do this, and some of these we already talked about. Then it's not just linear schedules we're talking about with 30-second spots. It's becoming more and more common to sell secondary events. So you have the program squeezed up into a particular region of the screen, and you run a spot or a promo in parallel with the programming. Or they sponsor a little graphic that comes up and spins around, or little guy walks across the bottom of the screen. You make money off of all that, and the broadcast salespeople have recognized the the fact that they can make money off of all these different things. They're not just constrained to 30-second chunks of time throughout the day. So it's enabled them to make more money out of the same schedule that they've always had. And obviously competition with new media is driving this, that they have to find new ways to make money because the advertising pie is being sliced thinner and thinner, whereas television used to have a very large chunk of that pie. Now a lot of those advertising dollars are going to people like Google and other people in different media. It's not that I don't think advertisers are spending that much more money. It's just it's getting sliced up smaller and smaller. So the broadcaster's chunk of this is smaller. So they have to find new and innovative ways to get more money out of the pockets of the advertisers. And of course, BXF enables all of this, this dynamic selling of inventory. The scheduling area, obviously major impacts there. As broadcasters move from traditional single-channel operations to within a digital realm, multi-channel is suddenly quite possible. In the same bandwidth that they used to use to broadcast one signal, with today's compression techniques, you can easily get 4 to 6 broadcast channels in that same bandwidth. And that's only going to improve as compression improves. And that's using MPEG-2. That's not even using MPEG-4, which now the industry is starting to look even more at MPEG-4, which pretty much doubles what you can do. So as you can imagine, scheduling becomes far more complex when you're talking one channel versus perhaps 10 to 12 channels. And this is without even buying any additional spectrum. This is using the same spectrum they've always had. One interesting thing is that the FCC does not dictate how that spectrum is to be used other than your primary channel. So if you have 3 or 4 secondary channels that you're broadcasting, you could do whatever you want with those. And people, they're talking about doing nonlinear delivery of content using those, so not necessarily time-based, but piping down content to boxes, set-top boxes or PCs that people are receiving these signals on so that they can watch the content whenever they want. Or sending down multiple versions of an ad so that they can target the advertising a little bit better. A lot of different things that they're able to do there. What BXF allows you to do is not just send a complete schedule, which it does. You can send a complete broadcast day or multiple days, but you can also send a subset of that if you wanted to pull out an entire program and all of its spots and secondary events and all that and replace it with something completely different. No problem, you do that with BXF. Or you can do event by event, and it enables when you're talking about an event by event level, you've got 3 different things you can do there. You can update, you can insert, you can delete. You also have something that is revolutionary but may seem like something that they might have wanted to do for a long time, is feedback from the automation system, which is actually airing this stuff, back to traffic, so that automation can dynamically feed back to traffic what's going on in the actual on-air area. So again, this is blurring the lines between the various parts of broadcast operations and making it so that they're very much combined now, and responsibilities aren't so black and white between departments anymore. And finally, as-run information, and again, that can be totally dynamic, so that today at a typical broadcast operation, as-run information, which is saying this spot aired or this spot didn't air or half of this spot aired, the video broke up partway through this, that information typically isn't sent from the automation system back to the billing system until the next day. In a lot of cases, that's too late. If the advertiser, this was the last day that they could air that spot because it's for a movie or something, or it's very topical, if it didn't air today, it's worthless, so you have to credit the money back to them. Well, if you can do this dynamically, and BXF allows all this to happen dynamically, you can then let them know, hey, that spot that you were supposed to run 5 minutes ago, something terrible happened with it. Are you okay with me running that in the next show? And so you're recouping that revenue and not just having that revenue disappear, which there's a large amount of that revenue that's just disappearing right now. So big benefits there. And I was alluding to automation, or as I've got it termed here, play out. What it boils down to in terms of the actual on-air control of a broadcast operation is during the day, there's much more of the control is moved out of the master control suite and back into the trafficking area, to the business type of people. So it's giving more control to sales and to the people who actually built the schedule. However, those people typically work 8 hours a day. So what do you do for the other 16 hours every day and over the weekend? Well, BXF also addresses that. And what it does is allows a lot more of the metadata to flow down from the scheduling people down to the playout facility than was there now, so that the playout people can actually make intelligent decisions when it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday. They can make intelligent decisions as to where things would move when they have terrible things happen, which always do. So pretty dramatic changes in the playout area. And then finally, the billing area, and a lot of people tend to forget about billing, but ultimately everything that happens in broadcast feeds back to billing, and that's how you make your money. So everything we've been talking about feeds back to billing. I think I mentioned before, the reconciliation of those as-run records becomes much, much simpler because you're finding out about those things immediately rather than letting them sit and fester for a day or so and then having to say, what actually happened? Oh, that didn't air? Well, how am I going to reconcile that? How am I going to make that good with the advertiser? It's removing a lot of those problems. The bottom line at the end here is minimize preempt make good situations. So fewer times in which you're having to preempt something, make it good later, or the even worst scenario is having to credit it back to the advertiser, which you really hate to do. So here's a use case, and what we'll do here is just walk through a semi-realistic use case of how BXF can enable better flows within a broadcast operation. So I took some artistic license with this, but let's see how this goes. So we say, otherwise typical Tuesday morning, a study is publicly released indicating that beer increases intelligence and milk kills brain cells. Okay, so this is released. Yeah, we always suspected this, but anyway. So of course, within broadcast operations, sales says, get those milk spots off of here. We don't want to have a news flash coming up that says milk kills brain cells, and then say, have a commercial brought to you by the local milk council. So they say, yank those things off of there. So they do that, and that's, this is all stuff, again, enabled by BXF that could not be done easily without it. Of course, being salespeople, they immediately turn around and call their beer accounts and say, hey guys, congratulations on that announcement today, that scientific study that says people get smarter when they drink beer. And you know what? Strangely enough, I've got some time available on my schedule today. By the way, I pulled those milk spots off. And if they're good salespeople, they sell those beer spots at a premium because they're at the last minute and they're capitalizing on some good press. So they're actually taking advantage of an otherwise bad situation here. So the traffic system that deals with sales immediately sends these dub orders for these new beer spots to air, and they're saying, "Rush, get these things as quickly as possible. We want to get these on air. We've just taken orders for these, and we can make a lot of money if we get these to air within the next couple hours." However, as is usually the case with last-minute changes, a lot of the beer spots that these beer advertisers want to run, they're not available at the station right now. So then you have automation. The automation system is able to use BXF and send a request to the content distribution system to say, hey, send me these beer spots. I need these as soon as possible. I'm going to air these within an hour or something. Within an hour, a couple hours, these missing beer spots arrive at what's called an edge server, which is where the content delivery people distribute the spots to. They're automatically ingested to the play-to-air servers. Metadata is fully populated in the automation systems database. The spots are ready to air. So they air, no problem. Notifications immediately sent back to the traffic and billing system. They recognize, let's say conservatively, a 15% bump in advertising revenue. Whereas today, if this type of thing happened, typically what would have happened is they would have pulled those milk spots on and put promos for future programs on, which makes them no money whatsoever. So they would have lost a significant chunk of money, and in this case, using BXF, you're able to make a little bit extra money out of an otherwise bad situation. And then at the end, the broadcaster wonders, is it possible to fund a new study that's going to prove that television exposure improves skin tone? So anyway, that's my pathetic use case. But it hopefully makes it real on how this can all work and make things better for broadcasters. I apologize that this may come up as a bit of an eye chart for you, But this is just a high-level diagram that I have that shows the relationship of the various systems all feeding through this BXF protocol. At the top here, you've got that content distribution system. The left, you've got traffic. The right, you've got program management. And on the bottom, you've got automation. And basically, you've just got any type of event-related metadata or content-related metadata flows through BXF. It can flow from any system to any system. None of that is dictated, although you can certainly specify in the messages the source and destination, or there could be multiple destinations for certain messages. So this just kind of illustrates how it sits between all these systems, and it's just a facilitator for communication is really what it is. A quick status update on where are we with BXF. This is a very conservative estimate of over 4,000 man-hours. It's quite a bit more than that, but that just gives you an idea of how much effort has been put into building this thing. And it is, when you see the schema, it's pretty comprehensive, and there's been a lot of thought put into this. Over 70, well, the 70 official members is higher than that, but these are people who have actually signed releases within SMPTE to work in this group. And give you an idea, a typical SMPTE group is a dozen people or less. So this is a monster group within SMPTE that came together to build this and is still together. The schema is complete right now. The actual document, a lot of people make the mistake of saying the standard is the schema. It's not. The standard is a document that goes along with the schema and helps you to implement that schema. The actual document, actually, we're beyond the first draft, but the draft that we're going to submit to SMPTE for balloting will be complete by December 1st, which is only 2 weeks from now. We're actually now up to about the fourth draft of it. The document itself, prepare yourselves, it's about 500 pages long. It's huge. So when I talk about this being a very large comprehensive standard, it is. But the good news is that 500 pages, that includes the schema itself. So you can cut that down. Really the guts of it and the part that you actually have to read line by line is only 50 or 60 pages. Only, yeah. Good bedtime reading. What we've done is recognize the fact that, again, we're not perfect. We had the participation of pretty much everybody who's going to implement this. But when you build a schema, it may look good, but in practice it may not work the way you anticipated it would. So what we've done is said we're going to have a validation phase that runs from basically right now, and this actually started a little while ago, until April of 2007, during which participants can go and test this out, see how it works, and give feedback back to the committee. If there are things that are broken in the schema or things that are less than optimal, it gives them an opportunity to do some initial implementation, to give feedback and fix those things. Just because we're going to ballot in December in front of SMPTE doesn't mean we can't change things. Our final technical ballot, we're expecting the technical level ballot to be in June. And that's the FCD ballot you see here. The CD is committee draft, which is our initial ballot to SMPTE. The FCD being the technical level ballot. So we can still change things, particularly if they're broken, between now and June. Why did we make the evaluation phase between now and April? Well, in the broadcast industry, April is the biggest month there is. It's when NAB is, which is, if not the biggest, the second biggest trade show in the world. And that's what all of the broadcast vendors are working toward. And that's what I expect at this year's NAB, you're going to see quite a few demos of this BXF and people hyping this kind of capability because the industry, as Jeff said, has been waiting for this for a while. And I do expect very rapid deployment of this standard after that. Yeah, we'll see how well this is received at NAB, but I expect this to be very warmly received by the industry. And the fact that people will have built prototype implementations of this, they'll be able to move on to fully productizing this very shortly after NAB. That's the problem with showing something at a trade show is people expect it to be a product immediately thereafter. But that's actually going to be good for us. It'll see this implemented pretty quickly. So that's my canned presentation. I hope that was helpful and at least giving you an overview of what BXF is intended to be. At this point, maybe I'll stop for questions, and if there once we get past some questions, I'd like to go into a quick tour of the schema itself. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I can give you a quick tour of the schema. Any questions before we go on to the schema?
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on AAF and MXF and talk about how they relate to this standard.
Sure. Both AAF and MXF are standards for embedding metadata. AAF is more at the time of production of it. When you're actually producing a movie or commercial or that sort of thing, there are more and more cameras and production devices have the ability to automatically capture metadata and embed it in, so that nobody is ever having to hand key this in, even as far upstream as you want to go to actually shooting a scene. It captures all the information about that scene, who was involved in it, and that sort of thing, and all the various production systems, as you go down through the production chain, can embed their metadata in an AAF, which is Advanced Authoring Format, is what that stands for, in that form. Then MXF is quite similar, but it's a little bit further down the chain, and it's Material Exchange Format is what that stands for. And it's meant so that there is a single way, and I guess I should back up for a minute. MXF is a wrapper, and it wraps the essence, the video, and the metadata in a single standardized way, so that various systems that are exchanging these professional video files have a single wrapper, so that they can look at that wrapper, understand what the content is, be able to get at the actual video essence in a standardized way. You know, in the broadcast industry, even though video servers have been in place for plus or minus 10 years in various forms, they didn't talk to each other very well. In particularly now that you have the consolidation of broadcast operations, where you have groups that have 40, 50, 60 stations within the group. If they had acquired their video servers over a period of 5 to 10 years from various manufacturers, they can't actually move the files between those video servers. So MXF was meant primarily to solve that problem of being able to move the video between these systems and also wrap the metadata in there in a standard way. So how does that relate? Well, BXF relates to that in that we can request the movement of those files down. When I was talking about automatic ingest is enabled by the fact that we say, hey, send us this piece of content. They send the piece of content in an MXF wrapper. You can then disembed the metadata and move the metadata or move the essence into whatever video server you have, because it's in MXF. So it all really fits together. It's all part of the same solution.
There must be a naming scheme and so forth associated with all of this?
Well, I could talk for another hour about content. You're talking about naming the piece of content,
yeah, the piece of content.
Identifying
so
the piece of content.
Commercials.
That's
your example, and
I could literally talk for another hour about that.
Okay.
The 15-second answer to that would be there are two principal standards, maybe three, that are enabling that. In the commercial area, there's something called AdID, which was started up by what's called the 4As, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, I believe is what it stands. It's the agency group, also created by ANA. Association of National Advertisers. So it's the advertisers and agencies have created this AdID, which is a single consistent way of identifying advertising content. And then in the programming area, there's something called ISAN, the industry standard audiovisual number, which the quick way to describe that, everybody's familiar with the ISBN that's on the back of a book. It's the same thing for audiovisual content, and that's administered by the ISO. Although in this country, the registration agencies are a couple companies, SecurePath and a little company called Microsoft. Question?
So you mentioned this country, which leads into my question, and also the 3-year window for analog broadcast. How is that all related to U.S. versus international, and how is this whole scheme playing out in the global market?
First of all, the 2009 deadline for turning off analog is U.S. only. That's something that's been imposed by the Congress of the United States, and that's when that's turning off. Other countries have different schedules. Sorry?
Do you believe it at this point?
It's in the legislation. However, there's some interesting wrinkles in there where the version of the legislation due to I don't know how you'd term it, but a small problem at the governmental level. The version of that legislation that the president signed is different than the one that Congress passed. And so constitutional lawyers are saying that means it's not the law. So there is still some contention about that. It remains to be seen if that actually happens. There's also some issues with, you've probably heard about this, the federal subsidy for set-top boxes. $40 a household, you can have up to 2 of those. When you do the math on them, though, that doesn't add up to all the analog households that there are. So there's, is it going to happen? Let's wait and see. They seem to be very serious about it happening then. I think it's going to depend to some extent on, we don't have that long to get these set-top boxes out and have people, the 80-year-old grandmother syndrome is the major problem here. You don't want her to have her TV turned off and her not know how to get television after 2009.
Have they solved the problems on the reception end of receiving the multipath signals and digital?
Largely, that's been solved. There's been generational improvements in the chips in receivers that have largely fixed that problem. So it's a whole lot better than it was.
Can we go back to international adoption quickly?
Yes. International adoption, thank you, of BXF. We've encouraged as much international participation as we can in this group. And SMPTE is an international organization. It is not a US-only organization. And in our meetings that we have, of the SMPTE as a general group meets 4 times a year. And we do have participation from every continent in that. But having said that, is the participation in my committee as great as I would like on the international side? No, it hasn't been. It's been, the work has largely been driven by Americans. While there have been a lot of participants that are outside of the United States, they haven't been as active. And so perhaps the pain isn't as great in other countries in this area, I'm not sure, or perhaps they're waiting to see what the United States does. We have on our roadmap for our group, we're under no illusion that we're going to be done with this when it gets through its SMPTE ballots. It's the first version will be done. We will then, our plan is then later in 2007 to reform the group once people have implemented this and look at extensions to it. And some clear areas of extension are the international areas. Having said all that, though, when you look at the schema, you will already see some nods to the international community in there, in the area, some areas that aren't that much of interest right now to Americans, such things as conditional access, and we have the various elements of DVB. It's not just ATSC specific. DVB-related elements are all in there right now. So we've done our best, but again, keep in mind that the majority of drivers behind this have been American companies.
Are you aware of competing international standards, say from Europe or China, that are trying to solve the same problem?
I'm not aware of any specifically, and we've tried to do our best to avoid that type of situation of trying to get the word out, both over in Australia, Asia, and Europe, that this work is taking place. And like I said, we've got a decent amount of participation from those vendors, but just they're not the major drivers. So I don't think there's anything competing. Like I said, for global digital cinema and television, SMPTE is the body to do this under. So if it's going to be done by a legitimate standards organization, that's the organization that people would be doing it under.
Okay, so is the focus totally on broadcast in this case, as opposed to any other delivery?
The initial focus was on broadcast, but as you saw, and as you'll see if you troll through the schema, it certainly supports nonlinear delivery of content as well. So just making a certain piece of content available, not necessarily at a specific time. It's got some capabilities in there. Does it have everything that's needed for non-broadcast applications? Probably not, because we haven't had, it's been broadcasters taking guesses at how that would be done. They're not experts in that type of delivery, but a lot of the broadcast companies are looking at doing nonlinear delivery of content as well. So I would say there's been a decent initial effort made at that. Is there more effort needed? Yes, I think the whole committee recognizes there's more effort needed, and that's certainly an area we would encourage participation in for future extensions. to make it more optimized to a nonlinear delivery of content.
To be clear, when you say broadcast, you're including in that linear channels delivered through by MSOs like cable.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have a 5-minute intro to the schema?
Yeah, I can give a real quick look at the schema here. Actually, since we're limited on time. Okay, so here's this will be the accelerated view of the schema. What I'm looking at here, and Jeff, you have access to this, and you're free to share this with any members of your organization. This is the documentation file of the schema. This is an HTML file, which is actually pretty nice for going and hopping through the schema. If you don't have a tool like XML Spy or something like that, that's nice for going through the schema, this allows you to go through. It's got hyperlinks all through here, as you can see. But let me just skip past the attributes since we're pressed on time. But the schema is split into 3 primary sections at the top. There's the data area, which is mostly what I've been talking about here. Then there's a query area that allows one system to query information from another system. And then a query response area, which is a place for them to send the response back. So if we just focus, since we don't have a whole lot of time, on the data area, under there is primarily composed of just a few different areas here. There's the content transfers area, which allows you to make requests of transfers of content from one location to another. The schedules area, I think that's fairly self-explanatory what that is, although that schedules also includes as-run information. You have a formats area, which allows you to build skeletal formats of programs into which commercials will go. The content area, I think that's fairly self-explanatory, it's content. And then we've got a content contracts area, which is kind of rights management, business rules type of information. And then down at the bottom here, you've got configuration. And this is an area I didn't talk about at all, but this allows one system to tell another system how it's configured in different areas. Again, I won't go into a whole lot of detail there, but pretty neat area. And then the last one that I'll talk about here is private information. I talked about the fact that we have areas across the schema where you can put in, if you have something proprietary that only System A and System B want to exchange that is not covered by the schema, you throw it into private information. And that's a whole structure that allows private information at all kinds of different levels of the schema. You've got that at the element level, also at the attribute level. Okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.